Apache Pass, Arizona, February 3, 1861. As the winter chill cuts the air outside, the legendary Apache warrior Cochise sits inside of a canvas tent, his eyes darting towards the thin walls as he becomes increasingly unnerved by the behavior of his host, Lieutenant George Bascom. He has agreed to this meeting with Bascom under the pretense of a peaceable negotiation, but now Cochise is being accused of a number of heinous crimes, including theft and the kidnapping of a local farmboy named Felix Ward. As Bascom finishes his list of charges being leveled against Cochise, Cochise's anger begins to rise. He did not commit these crimes, he protests, and he even offers to help find the Ward boy. But his words fall on deaf ears. He is told that he is to be arrested and held until the missing boy is returned. Cochise's brother, Coyotero, sits next to him, his disgust with the Americans' trickery also growing by the second. Outside, Cochise's wife and 2 children, as well as 2 other Apache warriors, all accompanying Cochise on this ostensible peace meeting, are growing increasingly nervous at the obviously rising tensions within the tent. The soldiers around them also seem to be growing more and more apprehensive as they see their commander's treacherous plan unfolding. Back inside the tent, Lieutenant Bascom orders the 2 guards manning the door to arrest Cochise. Within a few moments, the 2 soldiers are moving across the tent, their arms outstretched towards Cochise in order to apprehend him. Now, Cochise knows that his options are limited. He must either escape this tent, or he will be held here against his will by the United States Army. In a flash, the Apache warrior brandishes the large hunting knife he keeps tucked in his belt and lunges for the back wall of the tent. In one smooth motion, he slashes a hole in the canvas wall and escapes out of the tent, followed closely by Coyotero. But Coyotero catches his foot on either the edge of the tent or a rock just outside of the tent and tumbles to the ground, where he is quickly captured by the soldiers that are chasing him. While this unfolds, Cochise runs at a full sprint, running for a nearby ridgeline. Seeing Cochise barrel out of the back of the tent, his family and fellow warriors outside quickly discern that something has gone terribly wrong, and they attempt to follow Cochise. But Cochise's wife and 2 children are quickly restrained by the soldiers surrounding them. The 2 warriors, likely nephews of Cochise, both attempt to flee, but one is run entirely through by a soldier's bayonet and pinned down to the ground. The other manages to shirk off his army guards and follow Cochise towards the ridgeline. Now, Lieutenant Bascom orders his men to fire, and over 50 bullets fill the air, slamming into the trees and rocks all around Cochise. One of these bullets hits the younger Apache warrior in his back, killing him almost instantly. Another slams into the lower leg of Cochise, but his wound is not serious, and he manages to run on, miraculously taking cover before disappearing into the surrounding landscape in classic Apache fashion. But despite his miraculous escape, Cochise knows that he is in dire straits. Not only is he now injured and alone, but his wife, children, brother, and a fellow Apache warrior are now in the custody of Lieutenant Bascom and the U.S. Army. Despite his notoriously stoic personality, Cochise is terrified at what might happen to them. But he knows that his only choice now is to make his way back to his village and assemble his fellow warriors to wage an attack on these soldiers here at this camp, and especially on their treacherous, arrogant commander, Lieutenant George Bascom. Back in his tent, its wall now fluttering in the wind, Bascom knows that he, too, is now in dire straits. He had planned to arrest Cochise and possibly a few of the other warriors that he might bring with him, but he had not planned for Cochise to bring his wife and children. And he had certainly not anticipated arresting them. Now, with the acrid smell of gunpowder still hanging in the air, he realizes that he has arrested or killed everyone but Cochise. And now, he and his men are here in the middle of Apache territory, and they are essentially surrounded. and he knows that it will be only a matter of time before Cochise and his warriors return for his family. And when they do, he knows that they will unleash a fury that he and his men have likely never seen before. As he takes stock of this situation, Bascom wonders how things could have gone so wrong. The plan had been a simple one: lure Cochise into a meeting on the premise of peace talks and then arrest him for the kidnapping of a local farm boy by the name of Felix Ward. He would then hold Cochise and any fellow warriors and then use them as a bargaining chip for the release of the captured boy. But there were a number of issues with Bascom's plan. First, he had, obviously, not foreseen the possibility of Cochise bringing along his family. Second, he had gravely underestimated the consequences of what he had initially viewed as merely a law enforcement operation. Bascom had seen this as a simple matter of luring in a criminal and then arresting that criminal in a simple police action that would be of little trouble to a West Point graduate such as himself. Now, it seems all too likely to Bascom and to his men that they may very likely have started a war. Finally, in perhaps his biggest mistake, the young lieutenant had underestimated Cochise himself. For Cochise, even amongst a warrior tribe such as the Chiricahua Apache, is seen as a man not to be trifled with. In his 40-odd years of life, he has accumulated a record in his actions during raiding and in warfare that very few men, even amongst the Apache, could ever rival. With an imposing build, a serious demeanor, a laconic tongue, and a notorious temper, Cochise is a living legend even amongst the Chiricahua. But at this time in 1861, he is all but unknown to the Americans. To Lieutenant Bascom and his superiors, this is just another troublesome Apache, one guilty of horse thievery and of absconding with a local child, an occurrence all too common on the frontier, and he is certainly not a legendary warrior and leader of men. But now, Bascom and the whole of the U.S. Army are about to learn of Cochise's fury. As Cochise's captured family screams in protest, and several soldiers retrieve the body of the unfortunate warrior who had attempted to follow Cochise into the mountains, a cold chill seems to go down the spine of Bascom and all of his men. A chill caused not by the frigid winds, but by the realization that they have all kicked a proverbial hornet's nest and that the consequences may be dire. With this new reality setting in, Bascom orders his men to gather their supplies and to fall back to the nearby stage station, a small building not far from the site of the meeting. Here, the men circle their supply wagons, reinforce their defenses, and sequester their captives away in a small room. By nightfall, their work is finished, and many among them feel that they have created a formidable defensive structure that even the most formidable of attacking Apache forces would struggle to overrun. But, just as the sun sets, the men inside the stage station see a chilling sight, one that renews their fear of just what kind of Apache attack is to come. Dotting the mountains all around them, they see small fires, dozens of them easily visible in the darkness. These, they realize, are Apache signal fires. Cochise, it seems, has already started spreading the word about the Army's treachery. For his part, Lieutenant Bascom begins to wonder, however briefly, if perhaps Cochise had been telling the truth. Perhaps it was the Coyoteros who had kidnapped the boy, and, possibly, Cochise had no knowledge at all of the taking of Felix Ward. After all, it is not as if the Coyotero report each and every raid they commit to the Chiricahua. But still, in his view, Bascom had little choice but to at least attempt to hold Cochise for ransom. If he had let Cochise and his family go, they may very well have never returned at all, and Bascom would have no leads on where to find the boy. And this would undoubtedly leave a stain on Bascom's military record that would be difficult to expunge. The young lieutenant had undoubtedly been confronted with a particularly difficult situation. one which required an in-depth knowledge of intertribal relations, of territorial geopolitics, of local history, and a command of the language as well as superior negotiation skills. Bascom had to make the best decisions he could while being a relatively young officer, completely inexperienced in combat. He is only marginally familiar with Apache tribal history and the tribe's inner workings, as well as the recent history of the area. And, to add to his difficulties, he was communicating with Cochise through an interpreter who was both personally involved in the matter and barely functional in the language being translated. But now, all Bascom and his men can do is sit here within the walls of their ad hoc fort and wait. Meanwhile, having arrived at his village and having sent out word to the surrounding villages that his family has been taken hostage, Cochise now steels himself in his own anger. He has not only been accused of crimes that he did not commit, but now these careless, subversive Americans have killed one of his own and are currently holding his family hostage. He runs the events of the day through his head again and again, himself trying to figure out exactly how things could have gone so wrong. He had arrived that morning with his family, in jovial spirits and looking forward to a productive, peaceable meeting between Bascom and himself. Upon his arrival, Bascom had invited him into his spacious tent in order to enjoy a cup of coffee. But once inside, Cochise and his brother Coyotero were introduced to a man they did not recognize, a local rancher named John Ward. Ward was to act as the interpreter for this meeting, speaking to the Apache in Spanish, a language most of them were fluent in. But Ward would prove to be a regrettable choice for this role for two reasons. Reason one, it was in fact his son, Felix Ward, who had been kidnapped from his farm. Now, understandably agitated and believing himself to be speaking to his son's captors, Ward found it difficult to maintain his composure. And reason number two, Ward was barely serviceable in the Spanish language, having learned it from his Mexican wife. This presented a dangerous skill gap in a situation that depended entirely on precise, respectful, and cordial communication between both parties. Thus, the situation had seemed strained and tense from the moment Cochise and Coyotero had entered the tent. Once inside, all pretense of a peaceable meeting over coffee had quickly been disposed of. Within minutes, it seemed that a visibly frustrated Bascom was unleashing a tirade of charges towards the two Apache, accusing them of raiding, thievery, and kidnapping, with all of this translated in broken Spanish by way of the aggrieved father. Cochise and his brother had both protested vehemently and truthfully that they had nothing to do with these recent raids, nor the taking of the young Ward boy. They had offered up that it was likely the Coyotero Apache, a neighboring band, who were in fact responsible. Further still, they had offered to journey to where the Coyotero were and barter for the release of the boy, if Bascom would only grant them 10 days in which to do this. But Bascom staunchly refused all such offers, and instead ordered both men inside the tent to be placed under arrest until the hostage boy was returned. Now, the entire volatile situation had deteriorated to this, with his wife and children being held captive, and Cochise now wondering if he will ever see them again. But every pang of fear in the Apache warrior's heart is quickly diluted by his emanating hatred for Bascom and those responsible. The next morning, back at the stage station, the soldiers under Bascom's command awakened to another frigid dawn, one that sees the fog of their breaths hang heavy in the air. Suddenly, not long after sunrise, sentries on the south side of the stage station shout out that a group of Apache are approaching. They also report that they are carrying a white flag of truce. The Apache group reaches shouting distance of the southern wall and reports to the soldiers that Cochise would like to talk with Lieutenant Bascom. This is an incredibly dangerous proposition for Bascom, and he well knows it. Venturing out into the open in order to meet with Cochise could very well mean certain death, but considering the alternatives, he feels he has little else in the way of good options. So, within a few minutes of the Apache being spotted, Lieutenant Bascom, John Ward, Sergeant Daniel Robinson, and a sergeant by the name of Smith walk out to meet with Cochise. About 100 yards away from the stage station, they are met by 2 Apache warriors, a chief from a neighboring Apache band, and, of course, Cochise himself. For his part, Cochise knows that, despite his festering rage, the soldiers have indeed created a formidable defensive position, one that he did not expect, and one that he feels will cost many Apache lives to attack. The sacrificing of many warriors in order to capture an objective is not at all part of the Apache strategy for warfare, and thus Cochise has chosen to seek a parley. But the meeting is tense, terse, and essentially a replaying of their last conversation. Cochise demands that his family be returned, and Bascom demands the return of the captured boy. Cochise says that he does not have the boy, and Bascom responds that he will not release Cochise's family until he does. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Americans back at the stage station watch on for several minutes, hopeful that a peace might be reached, but growing more and more nervous as the impasse between Cochise and Bascom becomes more and more apparent to all. Finally, 3 civilian teamsters who are employees of the Butterfield Stagecoach Company named James Wallace, Charles Culver, and a man known only to history as Welch, venture out from the stage station, heading towards the site of the parley meeting. James Wallace has spent years in and around Apache Pass working as a stagecoach driver for the Butterfield stage line, and he believes that he has a cordial, trusting relationship with Cochise. His hope is that he can be of some assistance in negotiating for peace terms with the Apache. But he is wrong. As the 3 men are about halfway to the site of the meeting, Wallace suddenly spots a beautiful Apache woman named Juanita beckoning to them from a ravine off to their right. Juanita is the object of desire for many of the men in the area, and Wallace is no exception, having developed an affinity and possibly some kind of relationship with the Apache maiden. Her appearance piques Wallace's interest, and he and his 2 companions veer from their course, now heading to the ravine to meet with Juanita in hopes of leveraging her goodwill in these negotiations. But just as they reach the ravine where Juanita stands, Apache warriors who have been hiding in the brush and behind rocks in the ravine suddenly pounce upon Wallace, Culver, and Welch. Juanita herself grabs Wallace and drags him to the ground, where a number of young Apache warriors swarm around him, pinning him down. As Wallace struggles, Culver and Welch both make a break for the safety of the stage station. They sprint towards the safety of their comrades, making a desperate bid to save their own lives, but Welch is cut down by a bullet, possibly several bullets to his back. Culver is struck in the back, but manages to make it back to the stage station, though he is seriously wounded. As the ambush of their comrades unfolds, Bascom, Ward, Robinson, and Smith now make a desperate sprint themselves back to the circled wagons of the stage station. As they do, the surrounding landscape now seems to explode with hundreds of Apache warriors all raining bullets and arrows down upon the Americans and filling the air with ferocious war cries. Bascom and his party do manage to make it back to the stage station alive. Though Smith is wounded, it proves not to be serious. But now, it is obvious to Bascom and to his men alike that they are now surrounded, cut off from resupply or reinforcement, and in an even more dire predicament than they had initially realized. They hunker down inside the stage station, with the soldiers and teamsters growing more and more terrified. Meanwhile, still confined to a small room inside the stage station, Cochise's wife, children, brother, and fellow Apache warrior grow more and more assured that their captors will soon suffer the wrath of their Chiricahua brethren. As the day wears on and the sun finally sets, the soldiers again see the surrounding hillsides dotted with Apache fires. And now, they hear the Apache singing and chanting their war songs, casting an even more eerie pall over the already unsettling experience. The soldiers spend another restless, chilly night attempting to both keep themselves warm and to steel their nerves for the fight to come, though few of them find any success in doing either. The next morning breaks, another cold, frightful dawn illuminating the terrible circumstances of the men in the stage station. Early in the day, Sergeant Daniel Robinson courageously volunteers to lead a squad of soldiers and their horses and mules to a spring roughly 1,000 yards away from the fort. This incredibly dangerous mission is a necessity, as water supplies inside the stage station have continued to dwindle, and all among this group expect to be ambushed by the Apache at any point. But miraculously, they return unharmed, the Apache having left them completely unbothered. For a few brief hours, Bascom takes this as a hopeful sign that perhaps a peaceful parley can indeed be struck. But then, in the afternoon, Cochise himself appears atop a nearby hill. With him, standing beaten and ragged and being led by a rope around his neck, is James Wallace. From his perch atop the hill, Cochise shouts down to Bascom that he now has an American hostage of his own with which to barter for the release of his family. In the hopes of sweetening the deal, Cochise also offers to return the 16 government mules that he has managed to capture. But Bascom remains unmoved. Though he certainly agonizes over the choice to leave Wallace with the Apache, he still staunchly believes that the only resolution to this standoff will come by way of the return of the captured Ward boy. With his terms again refused, Cochise again stalks off, even more infuriated, and leading the terrified Wallace down the backside of the hill by his rawhide leash. Now, Cochise vows, Bascom and his men will feel the full weight of his vengeance. But the full story of what will come to be known to history as the Bascom Affair is too much to share here in one episode. Thus, this is a two-part episode. The conclusion to this story will see terrifying combat, brutal tactics, horrifying tortures, and the beginning of what will come to be known as the Apache Wars. So, be sure to join us next episode for part 2. But for tonight, those are other stories for other times. Thank you for joining us on this special two-part episode of History at the OK Corral. Be sure to click the like button, share this episode with a fellow history lover, and become a subscriber. Also, if you'd like to learn more about this topic, more about the Old West, or just love hanging out with people and talking about history, be sure to check out our weekly live stream right here on this channel. Also, if you'd like even more bonus material, as well as early access to all episodes, all shorts, and some behind-the-scenes content, you can become a member of this channel by clicking on the join button down below this video. Finally, be sure to follow History at the OK Corral on TikTok and on Instagram. And thank you again for watching. We'll see you next time on History at the OK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.